Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. No matter what time zone you're currently in, welcome back to Sip and Talk.
Glad to be back.
So, look at this massive iced Americano you just brought in. I mean, the cup is literally sweating. I know it's a hot midsummer day out there, but it looks like you ordered, well, a pretty excessive amount of ice just to get it back to the studio.
Oh, come on. That is not excessive. That is risk hedging. Because with the high temperatures across the country right now, if you don't order extra ice, in the 5 minutes it takes to walk from the shop, it just turns into a warm Americano.
Fair point, yeah.
And honestly, watching this ice melt so incredibly fast, it's basically the perfect metaphor for the global market right now. I mean, everyone is frantically looking for a place to cool down.
Wow, look at you, bringing the macroeconomics into the morning coffee run. But speaking of cooling down, this whole week, I mean, basically all of Wall Street and Silicon Valley, everyone's got their eyes glued to the, AC dial over in Washington.
Right, the Fed meeting.
Exactly. The Federal Reserve just wrapped up their June policy meeting. And the result, the federal funds rate is still dead steady at 3.50 to 3.75%. So is that an unexpected surprise or, exactly what we thought?
Well, holding the rate steady, that was fully expected by the market. But what really set off the fireworks was the dot plot they released right after.
Right.
This was the first policy meeting led by the new Fed chairman, Kevin Warsh, and the tone has just shifted dramatically.
Oh, I saw that. I mean, that dot plot was like a total roller coaster.
Yeah, it really was.
Back in March, people were, super optimistic, guessing we'd see aggressive rate cuts this year. And then we look at this new chart, and nearly half the officials, I think it was 9 of them, are signaling like, hey, sorry, we might actually have to hike rates by at least a quarter point before the end of the year. I mean, that is a massive hawkish pivot.
It is, but, it's a pivot forced by some really stubborn realities. The data is just rough right now. We're seeing this huge wave of supply chain disruption.
Right. Totally.
And you layer that on top of the energy spikes coming from the conflicts in the Middle East. And suddenly, our headline CPI inflation rate for May just shot straight up to 4.01%.
Which is a 3-year high, by the way. And, way over the Fed's 2% target. So you read the Wall Street Journal or the Financial Times, and they're all pointing out this incredible dilemma Warsh is in right now.
Oh, absolutely.
Because on one hand, you have the White House putting on this immense pressure to cut rates and keep the economy roaring. But on the other hand, these red-hot inflation numbers are basically forcing him to, stomp on the brakes.
Yeah, it's like you're driving a car and the passenger, meaning the White House, is yelling at you to floor it.
Right.
But you're looking out the windshield and you can clearly see the inflation red lights flashing. So you just have to ride the brakes and keep rates high. Or even, get ready to pull the emergency brake and hike them.
That is a perfect metaphor. And you know what's so bizarre about all this?
What's that?
Even with economists warning everyone about rising bond yields and this looming stagflationary impulse hitting the globe, Wall Street is just living in a completely parallel universe this week.
Oh, for sure.
Equities are hitting record highs. It's like they don't even see the pressure gauge redlining.
Well, that's because all the hot money is flooding straight into the tech sector right now. Investors are making this massive bet that the AI productivity revolution is just going to, completely outpace the drag of inflation.
Yeah, the AI boom is basically defying gravity at this point.
Exactly. And to justify that kind of faith, you really have to look past the software and look at the physical architecture being built.
Right, because if AI is going to save us, it needs a massive physical footprint.
Yeah.
And I was actually reading up on NVIDIA's latest strategic shift, which honestly kind of blew my mind.
Oh, the power issue.
Yes. We always assume that the chip's processing power is the bottleneck. But right now, the actual literal bottleneck for AI is electricity.
It's all about power. The physics of these next-gen AI data centers are just staggering. Like right now, data centers take alternating current from the electrical grid, and then they have to convert it into direct current for the server racks.
Which loses a ton of energy.
A massive amount. And it turns into heat. So that's why NVIDIA and Google are quietly moving to an 800-volt high-voltage DC architecture, and they're aiming to roll that out by the third quarter of 2026.
So by switching to 800-volt high-voltage DC, you pump up the voltage, which means you can lower the actual electrical current. And lower current means way less heat generated by the wiring.
Exactly.
Which cuts down power loss and saves on those insane cooling costs.
Yeah.
I mean, think of it like building a futuristic megacity. Having the best architectural blueprints, like the NVIDIA chips, is completely useless if the city's electrical grid just melts under the load.
That's spot on. And this massive infrastructure pivot is happening at a really crucial turning point, because the second half of 2026 is when the AI industry shifts from the model training phase into actual inference and deployment.
Right, which is a huge shift. Training the model takes brutal computational force. But inference is when that model is actually put to work out in the wild. Answering prompts or running corporate logistics.
Right, and inference demands extreme efficiency. So because of that shift, those super expensive, power-hungry NVIDIA GPUs are suddenly facing some really fierce competition.
Oh, totally. AMD is stepping up.
Yeah.
And then you have Amazon and Google deploying their own custom in-house chips.
Yeah, chips built specifically for that daily workload.
But, all this localized AI infrastructure, it relies on this massive influx of physical hardware.
Yeah.
And that is completely rewiring global trade. I was looking at Gartner's latest Top 25 supply chain report, and they highlight this idea of an autonomous workforce.
Yeah, where AI agents handle the routine decisions.
Exactly. The AI is making real-time routing and purchasing decisions, and humans are just focusing on high-level strategy.
And that ties into the other major trend Gartner mentioned, which is network-centric regionalization.
Right, bringing production closer to home.
Because companies are terrified of geopolitical tariffs and friction. They want production right next to the sales regions. Look at the foundry landscape right now. You've got UMC and Intel actively teaming up to challenge TSMC in the 3-nanometer space.
Which is wild.
And Apple is even shifting some of its orders over to Intel.
And a lot of that is being heavily pushed by the CHIPS Act, right?
Oh, absolutely.
But I do have to push back on this a little bit. If AI is making our localized supply chains autonomous, are we actually securing our economy, or are we just replacing factory workers and rewriting who holds the power in global trade?
Well, that's the trillion-dollar question, isn't it? It definitely shifts power away from labor and over to the algorithms. But we have to remember, this regionalization isn't happening in a vacuum. It's a panic response.
Meaning?
It's a direct reaction to the geopolitical shockwaves that are fueling the exact inflation we talked about earlier. Just this week, both the OECD and the IMF issued these really stark warnings about the stagflationary impulse.
Right, driven by the conflict in the Middle East. It's driving up fuel, shipping rates, maritime insurance. It's pushing the global CPI to that 4.0% mark.
Exactly. And it completely exposes the vulnerabilities that our diplomats are, well, kind of panicking over.
Oh, for sure. We just signed that high-stakes 60-day memorandum of understanding with Iran, trying to keep the Strait of Hormuz open for toll-free passage.
Which is such a critical artery.
It really is. And the politics around it are super messy. Trump has been highly vocal about his involvement in pushing these negotiations behind the scenes. But man, this diplomacy is hanging by a thread.
Oh, it really is.
Our diplomats were supposed to kick off these stabilization talks in Switzerland with envoys like Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner attending, but they hit a massive brick wall.
Yeah, they stalled out completely because of the escalating clashes between Israel and Hezbollah in Lebanon. You really can't separate these regional conflicts from the global economic toll.
No, you can't.
And while our diplomats are stuck in Switzerland trying to keep those shipping lanes open for just 60 more days, our own domestic defense industry is realizing just how deep our structural vulnerabilities actually go.
You're talking about the Reindustrialize Summit in Detroit.
Exactly.
Yeah, the whole focus there was on rebuilding our American arsenal of democracy.
Yeah.
We've depleted so many of our advanced munitions lately.
And the reality check at that summit was harsh. A recent study showed that replenishing our current stockpiles of interceptors could take up to 3 years.
3 years.
Right. You can't just print these things. They need complex supply chains, rare earth metals, testing protocols that we just don't have at scale anymore.
Which completely explains why all this private capital is suddenly rushing into defense tech and, cheap drones.
Exactly, to bypass the slow legacy contractors.
But here's the crazy contrast to me. Are we really just putting a fragile 60-day diplomatic Band-Aid on the Strait of Hormuz while fully realizing it's going to take us 20 to 30 years to actually reindustrialize our defense base? I mean, the timeline mismatch is terrifying.
It is terrifying. And it brings us to the biggest issue connecting all of this. Capital.
The money.
Right. Overhauling AI data centers with 800-volt DC power takes hundreds of billions of dollars. Rebuilding our defense base takes hundreds of billions. So where is all this money actually coming from?
We are essentially watching a massive capital vacuum right now.
Totally. Look at the IPO market.
Yeah, SpaceX just went public. It's trading $50 above its IPO price with a $75 billion float.
Which is insane.
That is $75 billion of liquidity instantly sucked out of mutual funds, pension funds, and retail investors.
And that's exactly what Seth Klarman, the value investor, is warning everyone about.
Right.
He's saying these mega IPOs, and we've got OpenAI and Anthropic waiting in the wings right now, they're acting like a giant vacuum, sucking up immense amounts of money right out of the financial system.
So it's basically a brewing supply and demand crisis for money.
Exactly.
It's like going to a neighborhood potluck where everyone brought incredibly expensive appetizers, but absolutely no one brought the main course.
That's a great way to put it.
If every tech giant, defense startup, and utility company is passing the hat at the exact same time, doesn't something eventually break? Like, who gets left unfunded?
Usually it's the everyday businesses. If the sheer supply of securities drives up the cost of capital, prices across the board soften because there's no liquidity left to support them.
Right.
It creates a really fragile environment, especially with the Fed signaling they might hike rates. Capital isn't free anymore.
It definitely isn't. So we're stressing over multi-billion-dollar capital vacuums. Our diplomats are stalled out in Switzerland over these tight 60-day deadlines, and we're struggling to rebuild our defense supply chains.
It's a lot heavy stuff.
It is. But meanwhile, there is this surprisingly successful and completely free form of international diplomacy happening right now in the American Midwest.
Oh, this is the best story of the week.
It really is. So first of all, the U.S. men's national team secured a spot in the World Cup knockout round. They beat Australia 2-0, and they did it without their star player, Christian Pulisic, which is huge. But the story that has completely taken over my social media algorithm is happening in Lawrence, Kansas.
Lawrence in Algeria.
Yes. So Lawrence is the city of about 100,000 people, and they're hosting the Algeria national team right now.
And the locals have just completely embraced them.
It's amazing. People are throwing these massive street parties on Massachusetts Street. You've got American citizens bringing homemade baked goods to the team's hotel. Kansans are literally using translation apps to learn French so they can talk to the Algerian fans.
I saw a quote from the mayor, Brad Finkeldye, and he said the team really appreciates the slower pace of the city. Plus, they get to use the top-tier facilities at the University of Kansas.
Right. I mean, we spend billions of dollars on defense, and we stress over these 60-day diplomatic deadlines in Switzerland. But it turns out a plate of homemade cookies and a soccer ball in Kansas might actually be the most effective foreign policy we have right now.
It's just a great reminder that human connection still works, even when all the massive institutions are gridlocked.
Absolutely. Which kind of brings us right back to your melting iced Americano from the start of the show.
Yep, it's almost fully water now.
I mean, uncertainty really is the only certainty we have in 2026. But honestly, no matter how the market shifts, Sip and Talk will be right here every week to help everyone figure it out.
For sure. Because facing this macroeconomic storm where inflation might stay high and interest rates might still go up, you really need to stay rational. Whether you're an investor worried about your stocks or just a consumer feeling the pinch of inflation at the grocery store, seeing the big structural picture is really your safest harbor.
Absolutely. But before we sign off, we want to leave all of our Sip and Talkers with one final thought to chew on.
Let's hear it.
In an era where these top-down government systems and massive institutions just seem constantly bogged down by conflict, maybe the decentralized citizen-to-citizen diplomacy we're seeing in Kansas isn't just a feel-good story. Maybe it's the actual future blueprint for how real global trust is built.
I really love that perspective.
Right. So what do you all think about the Fed's hawkish stance? Do you think they'll actually hike rates again? Or is the new chairman just giving the market a warning? Let us know in the comments. And please don't forget to leave us a 5-star rating and subscribe to Sip and Talk.
And make sure you go subscribe to our old friend Mickey's YouTube channel, Mickey to Life.
Yes, definitely check out Mickey to Life. Well, we will see you next time.
We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.